is it a challenge or is it a blessing to sort of make it and perform it here and then take it out into the world where you're really being among the few who represent something that's different and not something that's homogenous?
This time it's not because I'm first alphabetically, though, right? It's because I have the right answer.
And it's because you raised the question.
Oh, okay. No, the reason when we corresponded by email, this came up is because it really is something that I've been dealing with. And I was curious to hear what other people had to say. Because in my own field, there seems to be a request that our stories be universal. Israel is a very small country. Financially, it's hard to justify any film based only on Hebrew-speaking audiences. Every once in a while, there is a film that does that, but for a film to have a solid financial future, it has to cross over, it has to break out. And the more co-productions enter the Israeli industry, European financiers, distributors that are interested in the Israeli cinema because it's been successful recently, the more there is a request of me or us to create stories that can be appreciated anywhere. And at the same time, I can say that when I see a film that can be appreciated anywhere, or when I see a dramatic situation that could happen to anyone, in any place, in any time, it's usually not that interesting to me. Right, it's something that if I was on a plane and I've already read the safety manual 4 times, I might watch. My biggest satisfaction comes out of creating a character or a situation that is absolutely unique. And if I can convince an audience that it's interesting with its uniqueness, then there's a lot of satisfaction in it. So I'm weighing my options right now in that regard. I don't know how far I can move away out of my own little shtetl, but I realize that as there are limitations for an Israeli filmmaker, I might have to. And I was just curious to hear what other people here have to say.
After living, I lived in London, Berlin, Paris, all of that. This kind of, not lowest, but common denominator, art is about globalization. I'm talking about late 90s. Everything is about this and this and this, and then we're all going to the same openings and seeing the same art, and I knew that this is not, it didn't nourish me, and it wasn't precise enough for me. That's why I think I came back and wanted, to make art that you have your audience. This is my audience here that can really read my art in the more layers. And also then when it's, when it's spread its wings and it's universal, fine, then it reaches a sort of a process, or maybe distills some work that is very deeply rooted locally, usually when your roots are deep and wide and broad, so then the leaves and branches somehow can call in, be brought, give more shade and house other guests, There's a little distinction I want to make. Maybe it's because somehow, Jews were always writers, and somehow Jews were musicians, at least in Europe, very much. And in the beginning of the cinema, or I don't know, Hollywood was Jewish, and we didn't so much touch, that's what I feel, that it's somehow, I don't know, with Rivka and James being more from the visual side, material making, image making, sort of a non-religious depicting, abstracting, and using tools and using a play. That's the newer sort of the newest art for us. I don't know, when you keep saying about new media, because we use new media, so we're hip and we can communicate with the rest of it and all of that. And I know myself, it's much easier to send a CD and see a beautiful big video from the Dead Sea than to, invite a diverse and heavy 4 containers of sculpture that are made with Hebrew texts, newspapers, and
Hebrew dismantling instructions.
Yeah, and 4 great guys. But that's kind of something that has also sort of passed my mind when listening. Everywhere in the world, the art that is more specific and more authentic. I don't know. It's a very 19th century word, authenticity. But when an artist is connected, at least to himself, if not to a culture, I think that it becomes the better art in general.
Well, I think I have a question that is kind of more abstract, an answer that is more abstract, and this year I need to speak about my family because everybody else did, so I don't know what to decide. Family, okay. Yeah, well...
This is your material, so you can do it.
Okay, it's so basically when the word homogeneous kept popping up, so my family is anything but homogeneous. My parents are both Holocaust survivors. My mother survived the Warsaw Ghetto, and my father came from what is now Belarus. And I'm the youngest of 3 children. The eldest, my brother, from the pagan brother, he basically was a genius child. He started studying in the university when he was 14, and became a political activist. And he started the legalized marijuana movement in Israel that later became the Greenleaf Party. And he's a very radical left-wing anarchist activist, and he left Israel, and for the past 8 years he's been living with his Israeli wife in Thailand. The first 6 years were on a tree with high-speed internet. My sister lives in Jerusalem. She's ultra-Orthodox. She has 11 children and 8 grandchildren at the age of 49. I write, and many people ask me how come the 3 of you came out so different, because we are different politically, we are different in our choices. Every time, my sister, before living in Mea Shearim, she was a settler, and so when me and my brother would go and visit her, my brother would say that it's the only time he goes beyond the 67 border and doesn't return handcuffed in a police car, But we still kind of managed to have a very happy and warm family. And when people talk about those differences, it always struck me as strange, because I always felt that my brother and my sister and me, we were basically doing the same thing, which was in a strange way keeping our parents' legacy, because both my parents were survivors, and they're amazing people. My father died not so long ago, but they were amazing people. And the thing was that the legacy that they tried to give us was that they had to survive. My mother being orphaned in a young age and basically having to give whatever energy she got to find food, to find shelter. And the same went for my father, who was also so orphaned in a young age and had to take care of his mother. And they wished more for us. They wanted us to transcend that. I remember that I asked my father what he wants me to be when I grow up. And he said I was young, and he said, if 25 years from now, you'll have a beautiful house and a beautiful wife, and you'll make a lot of money, and that's it, I'll be very, very disappointed of you. And I think that the way that he articulated it, he didn't know, he could only say it in a negative way. He couldn't say what we should do. But he and my mother, they always wanted us to transcend some material existence. So we felt very much as if they took us all the way to some wall or a fence, and they couldn't tell us what was on the other side, but they bent there and they told us, climb on our backs so you can get there. And I think that, my brother always tried to do it through social and political activism, and my sister did it through belief, and I do it through writing. But I know that my parents are proud because none of us is a doctor or a lawyer or rich. So
I think we could have a show of hands on that one too, with regard to our parents' pride in doing non-conventional things. I want to make two comments hearing all of this. First, to Sigali, your ancestors made those river stones into faces 10,000 years ago. So the idea of making physical form has been around in the culture for a long time. And regarding everyone's comments, it's like genetic matter runs deep. And that may be what creates the distinction that allows this kind of creation where it clearly comes from a place, but it can go out and be meaningful. I said to Joseph before we came in that the scene in Footnote where everybody crowds into a small conference room, which is too small. Now, I've worked in many countries, and only in Israel do you have a situation where the conference room is so small that all the people can fit into it. It couldn't be more local, but at the same time, it touches universally. And to me, it's a puzzle. This remains an open question, but I think that's what gives richness to all that each of you does. One other question from here, and then to the audience. Joseph started by saying a very touching thing, which is that he doesn't know where he's from and he can't figure out what he looks like.
But sitting here now, I've been wondering where you're from. Because I think you and Stanley Fischer came from the same place.
Wait. Stop.
But where is that place? How come I don't have any relatives that look like you?
Wait. This is exactly the point I was about to get to.
Because I'm bringing up my children to meet people like you. You've done some good things for the Israel Museum, but if you can contribute something to our gene pool, that would be amazing.
But Joseph, this is great. I hope this is being filmed. Because exactly my point, when you said you don't know where you're from and you don't know what you look like, and my immediate thought was it's sort of about what you think and it's about what others also think of you. Now, I did drop in from another planet. Stanley Fischer and I do not look alike, except that we're more or less the same size. We both have white hair and glasses, and we always wear suits, and everyone confuses the two of us. But I have to reassure you, it's the same gene pool. And it is also the case that I think my father would be proud that I wear lavender socks and I'm a museum director, not a doctor or a lawyer. So the question that I wanted to come to, and it comes back to Achinoam, who said, I really didn't want to be an Israeli artist performing out in the world. Every one of you works here, performs here, produces, presents here, and also does that out there in the rest of the world. How do you feel? Maybe this is part of Joseph's confusion. How do you feel about the response to you and your creativity here, and is it different outside of here?
Hello. Just first, specifically about me in that case, my comment was really regarding I have now a 23-year career. So we're talking about way at the beginning when I was really young and I had ripped up jeans and I just, wanted rock and roll. I just didn't want to be from anywhere. But really, just right at the beginning, as I said, I realized that I was from here, and then I started exploring and seeing how interesting it was to be from here, even when it was and is very difficult. I think that we Israeli artists, we do have we have a privileged position in that sense, that we can come out to the world, for whoever really cares about this country, and I care about it and I love it. We can leave this place with all of its complexity and its problems, and we can, first of all, see what's out there, and we can show people or talk to people. We can meet people. We can make friendships. We can create relationships. We can break stereotypes. We can make a difference, and I think that everyone here does in their own way. And I find that to be very, very, very important. Even when we don't mean to, or we don't want to, or we're busy doing other things, we invariably do that. I felt for years that I became a sort of an Israeli ambassador of my own right. Not that I represent Israel, but I represent people here in this country and a spirit that wants to live in a different way. There must be another way. I wrote that in a song once, and I do believe it, that there must be. And so in that sense, I think that we all have that job and that right and that privilege. And also to refer to the point you made before, I just did want to make a point. I don't think that it's at all interesting to be universal without being specific. I mean, it's just not interesting. Why should I do that? I remember when I was a student at the Ramon School of Jazz and Contemporary Music, and everyone was singing a lot of standards and everything. And growing up in New York, I knew a lot of standards, and I listened to Ella Fitzgerald, and I loved it. But why in God's name would I want to just sing a standard that somebody's already done a million times before? What is interesting about that? Why? I mean, if I don't have something to say, interesting to say about something, and if it's not unique and very, very personal and even idiosyncratic or enigmatic, I don't really think that it should be out there. And being as we all draw from what is closest to us, from the images of our childhood, from the genetic memory of our ancestors, from the things that bother us or our dilemmas or our complexities, then naturally we will be showing something that has to do with our childhoods, our country, and the complexity of our country. And that's wonderful. And anyone can resonate with that even if they don't know Hebrew. You know, I've sung in Hebrew for millions of people around the world now. Sometimes they don't understand a word I'm saying, but they love it. And I try to figure out why. Why? It's because I love it. So I sing it with love, and I can convey something to them. And I sing, you know, in Italy, which is a country that I go to all the time, one of my most well-known songs is Uri, this song, Ben lo haya li yeled katan, Uri יקרא לו, Uri sheli, about a woman who's longing for a child. Now, they love that song, and they sing it without knowing that. And I'm sure that they don't understand the words, but they know, they feel the longing and the love and the resonance with this deep, deep place, which is both feminine and very, very specific, and at the same time universal. So when it's real, and when it resonates, and when you feel it, when you vibrate, when you can't live without it, and when it's so pure for you, and when you're an artist, then you can convey that to people wherever, and then it'll be interesting. Otherwise, it's just not.
I think the diversity of the country, the different, you know, immigrations, the deepness of so many different cultures creates an environment, and in this case we don't have a representative, but the Arab community in Israel is also part of it. And I think all of this together creates a situation where people that come here and are exposed to this diversity, to this real voice of all the interdisciplinary arts, they cannot not respond to it. And I just want to say that when I talked before about exposing what's happening here to curators, museum directors, we are doing now another thing here in Jerusalem, which is the Jerusalem Season of Culture, which was started by the Schusterman Foundation, but is happening partly in the museum. And the idea is also to get this special things that is happening and can only happen here in Israel, and get people from around the world to come and to be exposed to it. So next year it's going to go global, the world we don't like, but global in the way that we want international crowds to come and to be exposed to it. This summer we have a great project that is going to take place in the Israel Museum, which is a Ron Arad, it's called 720 Degrees. It's going to be in the sculpture garden of the Israel Museum for 3 weeks, every night from the 15th of August to the end of the first week of September, whatever it is. So anyhow, there is so much to see and to know that when we bring group of collectors, even people that have been to Israel 20 or 30 times, it doesn't mean that you have actually experienced this great source of, I think, inspirations that come out of the artistic community in Israel. So,
thank you. You know, coming back to Achinoam's point, I don't think any artist from any culture wants to be just universal. But what's really interesting is that artists from here manage to get out there but remain very culturally identified and culturally specific. And being an observer of this across the arts, my sense is that actually it is about pride in the complexity, pride in the eccentricity, pride in whatever it is here, and the depth of the connection. And you know, the truth is, we do sit here at the center of the universe, and everyone sooner or later feels that resonance from here, and it's a very important point.